Some of my favorite tuner cars ever built are sleepers. Cars out of the ordinary and what you don't expect. Everything from 1,000 horsepower minivans, like the Platycee, review coming soon, I promise, to big turbo Buick Regals. There's just something about a car that isn't supposed to be fast actually going fast. You could even argue that the EG Civic was never supposed to be a high horsepower monster, but people would take parts from a certain car and make it all-wheel drive with its big turbo setups. And those parts are from the CR-V? Using CR-V parts, you can actually make other Hondas all-wheel drive. But what about the CR-V itself? Well, thanks to my buddy Jordan at High Revs Media, he turbocharged his daily driver, CR-V, gave it a rattle can paint job, and got all the best turbo noises you could ever imagine out of the B20 engine. And man, oh man, is this thing a riot. So what's it like driving a big turbocharged Honda CR-V? Let's go for a drive and find out. The NFL playoffs are here, and I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official partner of the NFL, who is kicking things off with a huge offer. Throughout the playoffs, all new customers will get $200 in bonus bets instantly when they place their first $5 wager on anything. That's right, new customers will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. If you're wondering where you can use the $200 in bonus bets on, you can combine multiple bets from the same game for a shot at an even bigger payout. And if you're already signed up for DraftKings like me, you can get a no sweat bet. You can actually get your bonus bet back if your same game parlay or SGPX doesn't hit. And if sport betting is not available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the chance to win cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sports app now. New customers use the promo code ThatDude and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ThatDude only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Hello and welcome to a car I'm extremely excited to drive. This is actually a 1998 Honda CR-V, and believe it or not, it was the first CR-V to come to the United States. A big part of my car history is in the Honda tuning community. I didn't have a lot of Hondas growing up in the car scene, but all of my friends did. The number one thing that I saw in the 2010s was that the motor that they would use the most often was from the CR-V, because it was cheap and you could turbo them and they would make decent power on low amounts of boost. So you get yourself a cheap turbo kit, you do it with your friends in your garage at your own pace, and bada bing bada boom, you have your first turbocharged car. This really holds dear to my heart due to my friend Zach Smith, who had an EG hatch with a B20 from the CR-V with a big turbo on it, and it made about 300 horsepower. And this is essentially the same exact setup motor-wise that Zach's hatch was before it went kaboom. The cool thing about the B20s, which yes, this is still a B series, not a K series like nowadays. The B series, back in the day anyway, were extraordinarily inexpensive. You could find them very cheap and you could turbo them, have your fun. If it went boom, wasn't a big deal. This also has another part that has been a holy grail of the Honda tuning community. It has the differential system to make it essentially all-wheel drive. So a lot of people will take the EG hatch, like the Green Dragon Civic I drove a couple years ago, that was 900 wheel horsepower and CR-V all-wheel drive. So a lot of people will take this system and put it on the Civics, therefore you have a tiny little EG Civic that weighs nothing and it's all-wheel drive and it's turbo. You have to think, well then how did people figure this stuff out in the CR-V? Well, apparently people turbocharge the CR-V. So the number one highlight of this CR-V is the sound that it makes. So I'm gonna not go crazy yet, but what in the... The blow-off valve is really, really loud. So if you just give it it a little bit of load, you'll get the stereotypical early 2000s turbo flutter. Actually sounds a lot like the Turbo Integra I drove back in the day, which was a F to B swap, but it used a Chinese turbo kit. What's so funny is like the Chinese turbo kits make some of the best noises. Don't ask me why, but they just do. What's also very funny is that usually when I see this steering wheel, I'm usually in some crazy fast turbo Civic that has no power steering. The power steering and the AC in this still both work, which is really, really cool. One of the funniest things about this car is that since it has an intercooler up front and it makes the turbo noises, it can kind of throw other sports cars off on the road. If you think about it, if you're in a, say, Corvette and somebody comes up and starts messing with you, with a Honda, if there's an intercooler up front, you don't know if it makes 250 horsepower or 750 horsepower. There's just no way to really tell because there's just so many different variants of Honda builds. So in a funny way, some people can be intimidated by a CRV. I think it's pretty funny. Along with that, it's got a rattle can patina paint job. The interior is actually really clean. I just learned this today. The CRV, if you adjust the seats, you can literally make them beds. So if you're like on a road trip or something, you can lay the seat down and do all this other stuff. It was meant to be a car of a jack of all trades. It was officially kind of the first popular crossover because it was on a car chassis. It wasn't like its own SUV chassis. This actually uses an OBD1 piggyback system as essentially the quote-unquote ECU. So you're tricking the ECU with the piggyback system in order to use the force induction. So not Honda or anything like that. But you have to think, it's also all-wheel drive, so you don't have a lot of the crazy front-wheel drive waddle everywhere, and the diff locks up when you really need it. It's got a 5-speed manual transmission and really long throws. But what I like about the seating in the CRV is that it has a little armrest. See right here, you can see in the corner of the screen. You go like this, you can rest your elbow here, and then you can shift gears really easily if you're just cruising around town. This is his daily driver, and it makes amazing noises all the way around. Now it also has a dash from a Civic. It's got a boost gauge for everything you need to know, AFRs, all that good stuff, and a classic JVC stereo deck. CRV overall is one of Honda's biggest hits, right? Historically, they're used for everything. But when people started lowering them or making them off-road vehicles, that's when I really started to notice them more. I always saw them as vehicles to gut for parts to put into Civics. That's always kind of how I saw it. But as a car, they're a very good car. The seating position's good. Visibility is really good. And this actually was an off-road vehicle at one point, but then it was just too dangerous to drive and would hop all over the road on snow tires and mud tires, whatever you want to call them. It's got Evo 8 wheels, good tire setup, and it's cool to see an Inky as a spare in the back. I think that's a really nice touch. Yup, turbo Honda. Turbo Honda smell. Oh yeah. Thinking like second gear more. Yeah. Use the long gearing to your advantage. It's really controllable, it goes dead straight, and it's pleasant to drive. It's not one of those things where you're like manhandling this thing the whole time. He has a first-gen Viper I reviewed a few years ago, and he drives this more, and I can already see why. Yeah, you literally have to use all-wheel drive driving technique to get around corners. You have to throttle kind of through. If you don't, it starts pushing a little bit. Really like is that I'm really not disturbing the piece that much. It's, sure, it makes some noise, but not like, you know, I'm shaking the earth. This thing really wakes up around $4,000. That's like really where it really likes it. And it just stays very predictable, very linear power band. It's not one of those things where you're just doing this number the whole time. The dashboard, you can tell too, is that of this era, that Honda was borrowing a lot from their other cars, the Accord, the Civic, stuff like that, because it was a no-brainer. They're some of the best-selling cars in the world, and they're like, oh yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Oh yeah, there it is. It's fun, it's predictable, it hooks up. Shocked how linear it is, because I thought, you know, back in the day when I drove Zach's car, in that tiny little car, it's super dramatic, right? Since I can really just enjoy it, it doesn't have tons of turbo lag. I thought it would have a lot more lag, but no, it just goes into power and keeps going. We have this 5-speed, the gearing is pretty long, so you can just kind of stay in it, enjoy it. You're not racking the gears a lot, you just want to rev right around 7,000 RPM. It's a super enjoyable, but very casual turbocharged driving experience. I really like it. This is actually on Yonaka coilovers. They're double adjustable, so we have double adjustable coilovers on a CRV, which is really nice. But that way you can lower it, make it look better, because I know a lot of people, I'd say about 5 years ago, a lot of people were putting airbag systems on these and turboing them. A few people in Virginia I knew also did K-Series swaps in these, which is pretty crazy. It is really cool to see this as a viable platform and not just another soccer mom vehicle that everybody forgot about 20 years ago. But what's funny is that he's had a whole bunch of other turbo Hondas, and this is the only one he's ever had that actually hooks up. Because theoretically, you know, if you take the drive shaft out, it'll just spin everywhere. I think that's a good thing to end on. What do you guys think about a turbocharged CRV? I had a really good time. It's really easy to drive. That was the #1 thing I'm the most shocked about. Very easy to drive, very fun to drive, very unassuming. And yeah, there's just always something about a turbo Honda. There really is. Also, one more time, make sure to go subscribe to Jordan. I'll make sure to put his channel in the description down below. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.